Alien Queen's daughter calls a human daddy. The king's reaction is priceless. The unexpected declaration. The gardens of Azuris shimmered under the amber light of the setting sun, casting long shadows across the iridescent petals that seemed to breathe with their own rhythm. Dr. Ethan Cross knelt beside a cluster of moonbell flowers, his research tablet forgotten in his lap as he watched their bioluminescent glow intensify with the approaching dusk. "Ethan, look what I found." He turned to see Princess Kaya racing toward him, her purple skin luminescent in the fading light, her silver hair streaming behind her like liquid starlight. At 8 cycles old, roughly equivalent to a human 10-year-old, she possessed an infectious curiosity that had drawn them together over the past months. "Careful with the crystal vines," he warned gently, rising to his feet as she skidded to a stop before him. In her hands, she cradled a single starfire bloom, its petals shifting through colors he had no names for. The flower was sacred, he knew, given only to those most cherished. His breath caught as she lifted it toward him. "For you, Atara," she said softly, her enormous violet eyes meeting his. The word hung in the air like a struck bell. Atara, father soul, the most sacred familial term in Azurian culture, surpassing even blood relations. The palace guards positioned at the garden's edge stiffened visibly. One dropped his ceremonial staff with a clatter that echoed across the courtyard. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs as he struggled to find words. "Kaya, That word means—" "I know what it means," she interrupted, her voice carrying a certainty beyond her years. "Mother explained it to me. Atara is someone who sees your heart, who teaches you to grow, who stays when others would leave." She pressed the flower into his hands. "That's you!" Ethan knelt down to her level, his throat tight. "Your father is your Atara. King Voran." "Father is my king," Kaya said simply, "and I love him. But you're my Atara." She wrapped her arms around his neck in an embrace that felt simultaneously innocent and world-changing. Over her shoulder, Ethan saw the guards retreating quickly, no doubt rushing to inform the king. His scientific mind, trained to observe and categorize, understood the magnitude of this moment. In Azurian culture, for a royal child to bestow this title upon an outsider was unprecedented, possibly even treasonous. But his heart, which had grown to care deeply for this brilliant, spirited child over their months of shared discovery, couldn't regret the bond they'd formed. "The king will be told," he murmured, gently pulling back to look at her face. Kaya smiled, unworried. "Good, then everyone will know." As the 3 moons began their ascent over the crystalline spires of the palace, Ethan held the starfire bloom and wondered how he would explain this to a king who could banish him, or worse, with a single word. The garden's peace seemed fragile now, like the delicate petals in his hands, beautiful but impossibly temporary. And the king's ultimatum, the throne room of Azuris, stretched before Ethan like a cathedral of living crystal, its walls pulsing with veins of light that seemed to respond to the emotional state of its occupants. Right now those veins flickered angry crimson. King Voran sat upon the celestial throne, his imposing frame radiating authority. His skin was a deeper shade of purple than his daughter's, marked with the silver patterns of royalty that traced across his broad shoulders, his eyes the color of polished amethyst, fixed on Ethan with an intensity that made the human feel like a specimen under examination. "You dare accept such a title from my daughter?" The king's voice rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder. Ethan stood straight, refusing to let his nervousness show. "Your Majesty, I never asked for—" "Silence." Voran rose from his throne, descending the steps with measured grace. "Do you understand what you've done?" "What she's done?" He circled Ethan slowly, predator-like. "In 3,000 cycles of Azurian history, no outsider has been called Atara by royal blood. You are human, temporary. You will leave our world and return to your earth, and my daughter's heart will break." "I would never intentionally hurt Kaya," Ethan said firmly. "Intentions mean nothing against the weight of reality." Voran stopped directly before him, and Ethan was struck by the pain beneath the anger in the king's eyes. "My daughter lost her birth mother when she was barely 3 cycles old. Queen Morella has been the only mother she's known since, and she loves her fiercely. But you've become something else to her, something I cannot simply dismiss." From the shadows near the throne, Queen Morella stepped forward. She was breathtaking, her purple skin adorned with delicate golden patterns that denoted her position as consort, rather than birth royalty. Her eyes, a striking shade of amber, held a warmth that contrasted sharply with her husband's severity. "Voren," she said gently, "perhaps we should—" "No." The king's voice softened only marginally. "This human has disrupted the order of our house. But Kaya's word once given is sacred. Even I cannot undo it." He turned back to Ethan, his expression hardening into resolve. "Therefore you will prove yourself worthy of the title she's bestowed." Ethan's pulse quickened. "How?" "The trial of 3 moons, Voren announced, and the Queen's sharp intake of breath told Ethan this was significant. 3 tests over 3 moon cycles. Combat, wisdom, and sacrifice. These will measure your worthiness to be called a Tara by a princess of Azuris." "And if I fail?" Ethan asked. "Then you will leave Azuris and never return. Kaya will learn that some bonds, however deeply felt, cannot withstand reality." The king's voice dropped lower. "And if you succeed, you will be bound to this world and my daughter for as long as you draw breath. There is no middle ground." Ethan thought of Kaya's smile, her boundless curiosity, the way she'd looked at him when presenting the starfire bloom. He thought of his research, his life on Earth, everything familiar. Then he thought of the little girl with silver hair who'd chosen him as her father soul. "I accept," he said without hesitation. Queen Morella's eyes widened slightly, and something shifted in her expression. Surprise, perhaps, or was it admiration? King Voren nodded slowly. "Then prepare yourself, Dr. Cross. The first trial begins tomorrow at dawn. You may spend this evening with Kaya, for it may be your last." He returned to his throne, then added almost as an afterthought, "Morella, see that our guest has everything he needs." As Ethan was escorted from the throne room by the Queen herself, he caught her studying him with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. In the corridor's softer light, her beauty seemed almost ethereal. "You surprise me, Dr. Cross," she said quietly. "Most would have fled." "Most don't have a reason to stay," he replied. Morella paused, turning to face him fully. "And you do? Your daughter saw something in me worth honoring. I'd be a fool to prove her wrong." The Queen's lips curved into the smallest of smiles, and for just a moment, Ethan glimpsed a loneliness in her eyes that mirrored something deep within himself. "Come," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let me show you where you'll prepare. And perhaps we should talk about what these trials truly mean." The growing connection. The preparation chamber overlooked Azuris's eastern gardens where the first moon was already rising, a pale blue orb that painted everything in ghostly light. Ethan stood at the window while Queen Morella moved through the room, lighting crystalline lamps that responded to her touch with warm amber glows. "The first trial is combat," she explained, her voice carrying a note of concern. "But not as you might imagine. It tests your ability to protect what matters, even against overwhelming odds." "I'm not a warrior," Ethan admitted, watching her reflection in the polished crystal of the window. "No, but you're clever. That may be enough." Morella approached, standing beside him at the window. This close, he could smell something like night-blooming jasmine, though he knew it was some Azurian equivalent. "Kaya speaks of you constantly. Your Earth stories, your patience, the way you explain things without making her feel small." "She's remarkable," Ethan said simply, "brilliant and kind. You've raised her well." Something flickered across Morella's face, gratitude mixed with old pain. "I tried to fill the void her mother left, but I always feared I was just a replacement. Then you arrived, and she opened up in ways I hadn't seen since she was very small." "You're not a replacement," Ethan said firmly, turning to face her. "You're her mother in every way that matters." Morella's amber eyes met his, and the moment stretched between them, charged with something neither had anticipated. She looked away first, but not before he saw the gleam of unshed tears. "I should go," she said, but didn't move. "Your Majesty," Morella, she corrected softly. "When we're alone, please. I tire of titles sometimes." Over the following days, a pattern emerged. Ethan spent mornings training with the palace guard, learning Azurian combat techniques that relied on speed and precision rather than brute strength. Afternoons belonged to Kaya, who insisted on helping him prepare by quizzing him on Azurian history and customs while they worked in the gardens. "If you're going to be my Atara, you need to know everything," she declared, hands on her hips in a pose that unconsciously mimicked her father. "Everything? That's a tall order." Ethan teased, adjusting the soil around a cluster of singing ferns. Well, the important things. She settled beside him, her expression growing serious. Like why father seems so angry. It's not really about you, you know. Ethan paused. What do you mean? He's scared, Kaya said with the blunt honesty of children. My first mother died saving me from a collapsing structure during the Great Quake. Father couldn't reach us in time. He's been afraid ever since, afraid to love too much, afraid to lose again. She plucked a leaf, studying its veins. That's why he made Morella his queen but keeps her at a distance. That's why he's so strict with me. That's why he's testing you. The insight stunned Ethan. He'd seen Voron as an obstacle, not a grieving man trying to protect what remained of his shattered heart. The evenings, though, those belonged to unexpected moments with Morella. She would appear at the preparation chamber with tea or scrolls of ancient texts, ostensibly to help him study for the wisdom trial, but their conversations wandered far beyond academics. What's Earth like? She asked one evening, curled in a chair while the second moon rose outside, noisy, crowded, beautiful in completely different ways than Azuri's. He smiled. We don't have 3 moons or singing flowers, but we have oceans that stretch beyond sight, and mountains that touch clouds, and billions of people all trying to find their place. Do you miss it? Parts of it, he admitted. But I found something here I didn't expect. Kaya's love, Morella said. Yes. He hesitated, then added quietly, and other unexpected gifts. Their eyes met across the dimly lit room, and Morella set down her cup with trembling hands. Ethan, She stopped, seeming to wrestle with words. These visits aren't entirely about helping you prepare. I know, he said gently. I shouldn't feel this way. I'm the queen. You're here for Kaya. Feelings don't follow rules, Ethan replied, his heart racing. Believe me, I understand. Morella stood abruptly, moving to the window. This is impossible. Voron and I, our marriage is political, respectful, but we're not. She pressed her hand against the crystal. I've been lonely for so long. Ethan rose but didn't approach, giving her space. Morella. She turned, and in the moonlight she looked almost fragile despite her regal bearing. What are we doing? I think, he said carefully, we're being honest about something neither of us planned. The moment hung between them, full of possibility and danger, until footsteps in the corridor sent them apart like guilty conspirators. But as Morella left, she looked back once, and the longing in her expression mirrored exactly what Ethan felt blooming in his own chest. A connection as unexpected as Kaya's declaration, and infinitely more complicated. The trial and revelation. The arena of 3 moons stood at the heart of the palace complex, an amphitheater carved from living crystal that amplified sound and light. Ethan entered through the challenger's gate, his heart hammering as thousands of Azurian citizens filled the tiered seats, their purple skin creating a sea of violet faces all turned toward him. King Voron presided from the royal box, his expression unreadable. Beside him sat Morella, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. And there, bouncing excitedly despite the solemnity of the occasion, was Kaya, her silver hair adorned with ceremonial braids. Dr. Ethan Cross, Voron's voice boomed across the arena. You have passed the trials of combat and wisdom. Today you face the final test, the trial of sacrifice. This will reveal the truth of your heart. The arena floor began to shift, crystal platforms rising and falling in complex patterns. At the far end, a structure materialized, an exact replica of the ancient temple that had collapsed during the Great Quake, the one that had claimed the first queen's life. Ethan's blood ran cold as he understood. They were going to recreate the tragedy. Princess Kaya will enter the temple, Voron announced, his voice tight with controlled emotion. A structural collapse will be simulated. You will have moments to react. Save yourself and you fail. Save my daughter at cost to yourself and you prove worthy of the title she has given you. Father, no. Morella stood abruptly, her composure cracking. This is too dangerous. The simulation It is controlled, Voron said. But Ethan heard the tremor beneath his certainty. The king was forcing himself to relive his worst nightmare, to test whether Ethan would do what Voron himself had failed to do, reach his daughter in time. Kaya descended to the arena floor, escorted by guards. As she passed Ethan, she whispered, I'm not scared. I trust you, Atara. The simple faith in her words nearly broke him. She entered the temple structure, taking her position at its center. Ethan moved to his designated starting point, calculating distances, angles, structural weak points. His scientific mind worked frantically even as his heart screamed at the danger Kaya was in. The first rumble began. Crystal supports started to fracture with sounds like breaking glass. The crowd gasped as sections of the temple began to sway. Kaya stood frozen in the center, playing her part. But Ethan saw real fear creeping into her eyes as the simulation proved more intense than anyone had anticipated. He ran. His weeks of training kicked in as he vaulted over shifting platforms, ducked under falling debris. He could see the path to safety, a clear route that would take him out of the collapse zone. He could survive this easily if he chose himself. Instead, he angled toward Kaya. A massive crystal beam broke free above her, falling faster than the simulation parameters should have allowed. This wasn't controlled anymore. Something had gone wrong. Kaya! Morella's scream pierced the arena. Ethan didn't think. He launched himself forward, wrapping his arms around Kaya and twisting his body to shield her as they hit the ground. The beam crashed down and he felt its edge catch his shoulder with tremendous force. Pain exploded through him, but he kept himself curved protectively around the princess. Then silence. Dust settled as emergency crews rushed in, deactivating the simulation. Ethan lay still, Kaya trembling but unhurt beneath him. He'd taken the impact meant for both of them. Ethan! Kaya's voice was muffled against his chest. Ethan, please! He managed to lift his head, agony lancing through his shoulder. I'm okay, he rasped. You're safe. That's what matters. Hands pulled them apart, medics checking them both. But Ethan's eyes found Voren in the royal box. The king stood rigid, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Beside him, Morella had tears streaming down her face, her hand pressed to her mouth. The crowd erupted in deafening approval, their voices chanting something in ancient Azurian that Ethan didn't understand. Later, in the medical chamber, Ethan lay on a regeneration bed while healers worked on his injured shoulder. The door burst open and Kaya flew in, Morella close behind. You could have died, Kaya sobbed, climbing carefully onto the bed beside him. The beam wasn't supposed to fall like that. But I didn't die, Ethan said gently, smoothing her silver hair with his good hand. And neither did you. That's all that matters. Morella approached slowly, her amber eyes red from crying. The simulation malfunctioned. The safety protocols failed. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You saved her when the king couldn't reach them in time all those years ago. You gave him something he's never had, a second chance to witness that moment end differently. Before Ethan could respond, King Voren entered. The chamber fell silent. The king approached the bed, his massive frame seeming somehow diminished. He looked at his daughter, safe and whole, then at the human who'd shielded her with his own body. I watched my first wife die protecting our daughter, Voren said quietly, his voice raw. I was too far away, too slow. I have carried that failure every day since. He placed a hand on Kaya's head, then met Ethan's eyes. You did what I could not. You proved that love transcends species, that the bond of Atara is earned through action, not blood. Kaya sniffled, looking between her father and Ethan. Does this mean? It means, Voren said, a slight smile finally breaking through his stern expression, that Dr. Cross has earned his title. Though we have complications to discuss. His gaze shifted to Morella, and Ethan saw understanding dawn in the king's eyes. He'd noticed the way his queen had reacted, the depth of her fear for the human safety. Complications indeed, Voren murmured, but his tone held no anger, only a weary recognition of truths long avoided. Unity of two worlds. The Chamber of Moons was rarely used except for the most significant royal ceremonies. Tonight, all three moons hung full in the sky beyond the crystal dome, bathing the intimate gathering in tri-colored light, blue, silver, and rose. Ethan stood in formal Azurian attire, his injured shoulder healing but still tender beneath the ceremonial cloth. Beside him, Kaya practically vibrated with excitement, her new dress shimmering like starlight. King Voren and Queen Morella entered together, but something had shifted between them. Over the week since the trial, Ethan had witnessed quiet conversations between the royal couple, long overdue discussions that seemed to lift years of carefully maintained distance. My people, Voren addressed the assembled council members and honored guests. We gather under the tri-moon alignment to acknowledge a truth that has emerged from the most unexpected of circumstances. He gestured to Ethan. Dr. Ethan Cross came to Azurus as a scientist. He will remain as family. The formal pronouncement sent murmurs through the crowd, but Voron raised his hand for silence. More than this, his presence has illuminated truths within my own house that I have been too proud, too afraid to acknowledge. He turned to Morella, and for the first time Ethan saw genuine warmth in the king's eyes when he looked at his queen. For 10 cycles I have kept my heart locked away, fearing to love again after loss. I made my marriage a political arrangement and convinced myself that was enough. I was wrong. Morella's eyes widened, her hand rising to her throat. You have been more than a queen to our people and a mother to my daughter. Voron continued, his voice softening. You deserve more than the half-love of a guarded heart. And this human, he glanced at Ethan with something approaching fondness, has shown me that courage is not the absence of fear, but action despite it. He took Morella's hand, a gesture so simple yet so profound that several council members gasped. I propose a new tradition, Voron announced. The bond of chosen family. Dr. Cross will be formally recognized as Kaya Zatara, not replacing me but joining our family as her second father. And Queen Morella, he paused, his voice growing husky, I ask your permission to finally become the husband I should have been from the start. Tears slipped down Morella's cheeks as she nodded, unable to speak, but Voron wasn't finished. He turned to address Ethan directly. I have not been blind to what has grown between you and my queen. In another situation, it would be cause for execution. Several gasps echoed through the chamber, but I have realized that love, true love, cannot be commanded or contained. Morella, you have my blessing to explore whatever path your heart chooses. Our marriage was never based on romance, and I will not cage you in duty when I myself am only now learning to unlock my own heart. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers, but Ethan barely heard them. His eyes met Morella's across the space, and she looked equally stunned. This is highly irregular, one council member protested. So is a human becoming a Tara to a princess, Voron replied calmly. We are entering a new era. Let us have the courage to embrace it. Kaya, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. Does this mean Ethan stays forever? And mother will smile more? And father will stop looking so sad all the time? The childish summary of such complex adult emotions broke the tension. Laughter rippled through the gathering, warm and genuine. Yes, little star, Voron said, kneeling to his daughter's level. That's exactly what it means. The ceremony that followed was beautiful in its simplicity. Ethan placed his hand over his heart and spoke the Atara oath, promising to guide, protect, and cherish Kaya for all his days. She responded with the acceptance, her young voice clear and certain. When the formal proceedings ended and the guests mingled, Morella found Ethan on the observation balcony, where the garden stretched out below, bioluminescent flowers creating constellations on the ground that mirrored the stars above. I don't know what to say, she admitted, standing beside him. Voron's declaration was unexpected. He's giving you freedom, Ethan said quietly. The question is, what will you do with it? Morella turned to face him, the moonlight painting her purple skin in shades of silver and blue. I think, she said slowly, I would like to discover what this feeling between us truly is. Without guilt, without rushing, just honestly. I'd like that too, Ethan replied, taking her hand carefully as if she might vanish. You do realize, she said with a slight smile, that you've turned our entire world upside down in less than a year? I'm a scientist, he said, returning her smile. We tend to do that. Inside the chamber, they could hear Kaya laughing as Voron lifted her onto his shoulders, a gesture of playful affection Ethan had never seen from the usually stern king. The sight made his chest ache with happiness. 2 worlds, Morella murmured, following his gaze. Human and Azurian, coming together in ways no one could have predicted. 3 worlds, actually, Ethan corrected gently. Kaya's world of innocence and love that made all this possible. She saw what we adults were too complicated to recognize. That family isn't about blood or species or tradition. It's about who chooses to stay. Morella leaned her head against his shoulder, a gesture of trust and affection that felt like a promise of things to come. Then I'm glad you chose to stay, Ethan Cross. As the 3 moons reached their zenith, painting the palace in their combined light, Ethan realized he'd found something he hadn't even known he was searching for. Not just a place to belong, but people to belong with. A spirited princess who'd claimed his heart as her Atara, a queen whose loneliness matched his own, and even a king who'd learned that opening one's heart again was the bravest act of all. The future was uncertain, filled with challenges they couldn't yet imagine, but standing there under alien moons with Morella's warmth beside him and Kaya's laughter floating through the air, Ethan knew that some bonds, the ones forged in courage, tested by sacrifice, and blessed by love, could unite not just two people, but entire worlds, and that was worth every risk he'd taken